PlayStation, one of the big three when it comes to the gaming industry. Owned by their parent company Sony, this series of consoles has gone over to sell well over 500 million consoles worldwide. Personally, I think Xbox is better, but that's because I grew up with it. But there is no doubt about the greatness and influence of PlayStations in this industry. Now, why am I talking about PlayStation? Well, back in 1996, the devs at Nana Osha were cooking up a cool new game. Well, what game is this? Well, widely considered the first ever rhythm game ever, Parappa the Rapper. This game was revolutionary for its time, as people had never played a game like this before. Also, the art style was pretty cool and has never been seen before, with two-dimensional paper beings being in a 3D type game. Now, almost 30 years later, the influence of this game is still felt with games like Friday Night Funkin' and a lot more. But the original isn't what we're talking about today. Why? Well, one, because I suck at the original, and two, because I personally think that Parappa the Rapper 2 is better. I promise it's not because I suck. Today, we'll be looking into Parappa the Rapper 2, how it was made, its story, and how it's held up in recent years. We'll also be looking at the game Ribbon, a Japanese exclusive game that also has a different approach to how rhythm games are. After the success of Parappa the Rapper, the studio made a spin-off game called Unjammer Lammy that consists of a character named Lammy trying to get to her concert before she's late. The studio wanted more out of this gaming IP, so they started to get work on the sequel to this game in around 1999, with the lead to the project being the company Nana Osha. The game was to follow how the previous game went, with Parappa trying to impress his love interest, Sunny. But the main story is that a kid that works for his dad's burger company turns all the food into noodles around the town. So Parappa has to try to save the day while trying to impress Sunny too. The game's story is around 8 levels long, with the last track being kind of a look how far we made it type track. The game was released on August 30th, 2001, with international release being January of 2002. The game had a budget of $65 million. The game seemed to do fine, but the game didn't do as good as the game before. The game has an average ranking of around 5 to 7 with the fans. The soundtrack of the game was composed by Maya Asa Matsura and Yoshihisa Suzuki. I know I butchered those names horribly. Please forgive me. The soundtrack is actually really good for a rhythm game. I enjoy it personally, and I generally listen to it like all the time. Specifically the song Big, or as most people know it, the level with Guru Ant. Since the game didn't do as well as the first, the IP hasn't gotten a solo game in around, I'd say like 25, 24 years. Parappa has been featured in media like PlayStation All-Stars, Robot Chicken, and even Astrobot. But it seems the only activity of the actual Parappa IP has only been a remake of the Parappa 1 that was released on the PS4. Parappa's influence had a huge impact on the rhythm game genre, with many games being influenced, like Friday Night Funkin', and I'm gonna put the rest of the other ones on the screen because I can't think of any more. The game actually got its own 30-episode anime, with the focus being Parappa in his everyday life, so like a slice of life. The series isn't bad, but it's kind of boring in my opinion. Parappa has a great fan base overall, considering he hasn't had a game since 9/11, which in the span of things is genuinely insane to still have a huge fan base, as the IP has so much more potential, but the people at Sony don't do anything with it, with games like Ribbon and plenty of more, which I'll put on the screen here. Now, I had mentioned the game Ribbon earlier in the intro. Well, here's the short bit on it. Ribbon is a Japanese rhythm game that is known for being obscure and having its own approach to how they do the rhythm game. So as you can see with the footage that's in the background, you're on like this line, and then there's like different types of like obstacles you got to get over. So like there's pits, there's like loops, there's like walls, and then there's the occasional like squiggly line. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's also cool that it has its own approach, like I just mentioned. The game was produced by Nana Osha, the same people who made Parappa the Rapper. This game was released in December of 1999. The release was only a Japanese release. Well, why? Well, because Sony wasn't impressed by the game's simple design and such, so they never released it in North America. A Sony executive had brought it up at E3 2014, and people wanted to know more. He didn't know that the game wasn't released in the West. So because of that, they made a port for it. And now the game is known basically everywhere. The game was a hit in Japan back in 1999 though, and the game got its own sequel on the PS2 called Vibripple. The game isn't bad, but the only issue is that the game isn't fully Japanese, so I generally don't know anything and I can't read anything. But hey, you can bounce to collect fruits. I mean, in my opinion, that's pretty cool. Overall, the rhythm game industry is a huge industry overall, with games like Dance Dance Revolution, Friday Night Funkin', that one game I can't remember the name of. I'll probably put it on the screen. And an industry I love dear to my heart. The two games that I mentioned here are fun in their both ways. Parappa being the story, gameplay, the character design, the design of the world in general, and the soundtrack. And Vibrarium being that you can insert your own CD and play a song. So let's take for example Yeezus by Kanye West. You can put in Yeezus by Kanye West into your PS1 with VibRibbon, and it will load it onto VibRibbon. And if you want to play Let's Play, for example, on site, it will make its own level for it. It's actually really cool. And I'll like link a video I found on Reddit for it. It's actually really damn cool. But personally, if I had to choose between the two, considering both games are great, I'm picking Unjammerlammy. I'm joking. But seriously, I grew up watching the famous video Chinese, which consists of two guys playing Parappa the Rapper 2. So I'm personally choosing Parappa the Rapper 2. And that's basically how I become a fan of it. But yeah, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.